Hi there everyone, welcome to another episode of Let's Survive Paddy Plays. Today we're going to be doing a review. This is my first review for the channel, but it's for a game that in my opinion wholly deserves it, and that is for Capcom's Resident Evil 3 Remake, which was released at the start of April of this year. The original Resident Evil 3 is one of my favourite in the entire Resident Evil franchise. I know that lots of people have a huge fondness for 2 and lots of people have a huge fondness for 4, and I love those games, but for me 3 was a really special game because I adored the first game in the series. What kind of disappointed me at the time that I played 2 in 1998 was that it was Leon and Claire and it didn't feel connected to the story of 1 entirely through characters anyway. Over the years I've grown to love Resident Evil 2 just as much, but at the time it was just a bit of a disappointment for me. However, when Resident Evil 3 came out in 1999, I was so excited. One of my favourite characters, Jill Valentine, kicking ass and fighting one of the greatest antagonists that the Resident Evil franchise has created to date, Nemesis. Obviously, with all of that baggage, that emotional baggage, it was very strange to go into a brand new take on Resident Evil 3. I didn't expect it to be the exact same game again, however, some of the changes were quite big, unlike the ones in 2, which felt more surface level. But at the same time, it was cool. It was cool to see a new take on Resident Evil 3. One of my favourite things about the Resident Evil 3 remake is that it doesn't follow in the footsteps of its predecessor kind of exactly. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's start off by talking a little bit about Resident Evil 3 remake. The game stars Jill Valentine, who's one of the lead characters from the first Resident Evil. Jill and her partner Chris were involved in the incident at the mansion in the Arklay Mountains, and when she tried to report it to her superiors, well, actually when all the STARS members tried to report it to their superiors, they were told in no uncertain terms, like, this is none of your business, stay out of it. As the story goes, Chris went off to Europe, which is where Code Veronica takes up, and Jill was left in Raccoon City, along with Brad Vickers and Barry Burton. Resident Evil 3 Remake starts out with Jill in her apartment, having just woken up. She's had nightmares about the mansion incident. She keeps thinking she might have been infected. When the game commences, you've got a Jill who's quite shaken by what she's experienced, and then she's even more shaken when a gigantic 7-foot monster covered in black breaks into her apartment through the wall, throws her around a bit, and chases her out into the streets. And it's an incredible intro. The first 6 minutes of this game are one of the coolest set pieces I've ever seen, just being totally honest. Once out of her apartment, Jill finds Brad Vickers, who tells her that there's a monster that is hunting STARS members, which are him and her, basically. The game then sees Jill trying to escape Raccoon City, and along the way she meets characters like Carlos Oliveira, Nikolai, Mikhail, Victor, a bunch of supporting characters within this game. There are significant changes, especially in locations, to the original game, and in what might be a bit of a negative critique, it does feel like they've taken a lot of locales that were already in the Resident Evil 2 remake, such as sewers and the Nest facility, and kind of carried them over to the Resident Evil 3 remake. In saying that as a negative, the original Resident Evil 3 did something very similar. With the exception of 1 or 2 locations, it carried over almost the entire police station. The police station does make an appearance in the Resi remake, but not in quite the same capacity that it did in the original. I mean, one of the main things that I want to talk about with the Resident Evil 3 remake is the gameplay and the length, because the length has been a big talking point. People are saying, oh, it's only 5-6 hours, and yeah, that's entirely true. So if you're the type of person that plays a game once and leaves it at that and kind of moves on, maybe Resident Evil 3 Remake is not for you. And I say that just because if you're somebody like me who likes to go in and do everything, then Resident Evil 3 Remake is an awesome game for you because it's so much fun to play. The gameplay itself is so good that going back in, unlocking new items, unlocking new costumes, all of it is, for me, so enjoyable. I've pumped 44 hours into this game and I am not disappointed at all. I've loved every second. While I do love the game and I think it's a great addition to what the Resident Evil series is building right now with these remakes, it doesn't beat 3. Whereas for me, the Resident Evil 2 remake is a better version of Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 3 feels more like a different version. Like, it would never be that I would go, well, I'm just not going to play the original Resident Evil 3, I'll just play this one. Because there's stuff in the original Resident Evil 3 that's still better. Whereas in the Resident Evil 2 remake, it feels like they didn't excise anything per se major. This is a great game, and one of my favorite things is Nemesis himself, because Nemesis is such an iconic monster, and kind of the relentless pursuit that he puts you under throughout the game. It feels big, it feels intense, it feels terrifying. Where Mr. X was scary in Resident Evil 2 because he would just appear and hunt you down, he was slow. There was very clear ways of getting past him. Nemesis is fast, he is terrifying. He caught me off guard once or twice where I had kind of said to myself, oh, I know his patterns, I've figured this out, and then he would just appear somewhere that I was not expecting. Nemesis leads into a great thing, which is talking about the quick dodge within the game. Much like the original Resident Evil 3, Resident Evil 3 Remake features a new component called quick dodge. This is a lifesaver, and having gone back to play Resident Evil 2 Remake right after, I felt like I was missing a limb not having my quick dodge. It's simply used by pressing your R bumper trigger on whatever device you're playing on. I don't know about keyboard controls, but you basically, if you time it just right, you evade the attack and you have a couple of seconds to get like a shot in slow motion. It's a great mechanic used really well in this game, especially when fighting gigantic monsters like the Hunter Gammas or even just regular zombies. Sometimes rather than having to face them, you can just quick dodge away and roll to safety. Some other components within the game from the original Resident Evil 3 are things like combining ammunition, handgun parts, getting item boxes when you defeat Nemesis instead of running away. But the one thing is that a lot of the other mechanics people now will say are similar to the Resident Evil 2 remake, but it's just funny because with the original Resident Evil 3, things like quick turn, quick dodge, combining ammo, red barrels, these were all inclusions in that game, and actually the red barrels are back and they are so much fun. The campaign is relatively short, but at the same time, the story does feel like there's a pressure on you the whole way through and kind of pushing you forward. And on subsequent playthroughs, you get to experience a lot more of wandering, exploring, figuring things out. Some of the kind of records and achievements and trophies are great at like encouraging you to explore. Unlike conventional Resident Evils, where it's like finish it in under 3 hours and get like an infinite launcher, you get points per playthrough. These points can be used to buy things like new costumes, new items, and some of those items are really cool. They're not just infinite weapons. There are some really cool stuff like extra hip pouches to allow you to carry more on your playthroughs, or getting items early on that can help you get more ammo, more weapons and stuff. So each playthrough really does feel like not only are you getting better at the game, but because of these kind of unlocks, you are actually stronger. The character is. The thing is, it really encourages replays, and people aren't talking about that. People are going with this short narrative, and I do understand that it is a short narrative, but if you are the type of person who loves kind of, you know, speed running through something and trying to do things as quick as you can, or I've even started setting myself little challenges now that I've gotten a platinum trophy in it. Rather than just going back and playing it, I'm now setting myself challenges like complete the game using only the knife on hardcore difficulty. And actually, while I'm here, let's talk difficulties, because this game has a load of difficulties. It has assisted, which is terrible in my opinion because it's way too easy. Like, it's not funny how easy it is. Standard should have been the easy. I would recommend, if you played Resident Evil 2 Remake and you're looking for a similar level of challenge, start on hardcore. Hardcore is a great difficulty. It's a lot of fun. It's challenging without being too hard. And then you get to work your way up into Nightmare, which they change the locations of stuff. Nemesis spawn locations are different. His attack patterns are different. He's faster. The items that you want to pick up are in different locations. It's awesome. It's a great kind of difficulty jump from hardcore to Nightmare. Beyond Nightmare, there is Inferno, which is exceptionally challenging. Inferno has all of the above from Nightmare, but it also has no autosave. So like the Resident Evil 2 remake, if you're playing in Inferno, you have to save at a typewriter. To fans of the original, it's going to seem like it's a little bit too different at times, but if I urge you, if you can stick with it, it goes to some really cool places, especially once you get to new areas like the hospital, which has been put in lieu of the clock tower from the original game. I know that was a huge sticking point for a lot of people, as was Jill's redesign. I personally love Jill's redesign, and I think that the voice actor brings a real sassiness to Jill that is so awesome, and her chemistry with Carlos is absolutely wonderful. I have to say, just this is one of my favorite interpretations of Jill to date. On first playthrough, the game could be completed in between 5 to 7 hours on standard difficulty, depending on how good you are at other Resident Evil games. But it's really once you start going into hardcore and Nightmare that you really start to learn that the game has a lot more to offer. I personally would say that while this is not better than the Resident Evil 2 remake, it's the one I'm much more likely to replay, even though it doesn't have as much content. The game is just so freaking enjoyable, so streamlined, so well paced, that I find myself going back to it over and over, even when I have gotten the Platinum Trophy and there's technically nothing left for me to do. I do hope that Capcom take fans' kind of requests on board and create some additional DLC, because I think there's great opportunities to follow the events of what happens with Nikolai. There's a character called Murphy. I would like to see what happens with him. Tyrell Patrick, there's a whole thing, a sub-story that could happen there. There are these opportunities to explore other character stories within this world. And I'm not going to get into it here, but the game also includes Resident Evil Resistance, which is an online multiplayer game, asynchronous multiplayer game with kind of 4v1. I'm loving Resident Evil Resistance, which is why I'm not getting into it here. I want to do a separate review specifically for that. I understand, yet again, people have had some issues with it, but I want to talk about that in my own review. However, I do still feel like it's lacking the Mercenaries mode. I would love to have seen the Mercenaries brought to life in this new iteration of Resident Evil, especially with the quick dodge and the really fun gameplay mechanics that are present. So hopefully there are opportunities for Capcom to add DLC down the line. Resident Evil 3 Remake is available for kind of between, you can get it on various stores for between 45 and 60 bucks. And I think, as I say, that if you're somebody who loved the Resident Evil 2 Remake, will get their money's worth out of this, will play every mode, finish it on every difficulty, unlock everything. This is well worth your time. If you're somebody that plays through something once and then kind of just wants to see the story and that's it, wait for this to go down in price, because there's no point in paying 60 bucks for something that you're going to finish in 6 hours and move on to something else. I am not dismissing this game. I love it. Like, I've pumped 44 hours into it. I love it. For my actual review, I give Resident Evil 3 Remake an 8 out of 10. I think it's a fantastic remake of a great game, but I don't consider it a remake per se. It's definitely more of a reimagining with how much is different. I would love to see Capcom add some DLC. I think that could win some really good favor with fans. I just had an absolute blast with it, and I hope if you've checked it out, I hope you did too. Let me know what you thought of Resident Evil 3 Remake in the comments below, your thoughts on it, some of your best runs, any advice for me for new run-throughs, because as I say, I'm trying a bunch of stuff. My most recent one is trying to finish the game on hardcore with just a knife. So any advice on cool little extra modes to try out, please let me know. As always, thank you so much for checking out the channel, and please like and subscribe if you like what you're seeing here. I'll be back with more news and reviews on survival horror games soon, as well as Let's Survive Together, with many episodes coming soon, with me and my friends playing World War Z. Was a hell of a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun for you to watch. Resident Evil 3 Remake, 8 out of 10, and a really good remake that doesn't outdo its original, but is a great standalone experience. Peace out and mind yourself out there, and let's survive together.